Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Our current session focuses on the features of spoken language and classroom activities. I hope this session would give you some idea of the nature of the spoken language activities that can be used in second language spoken classroom, and what are the particular features of these kind of activities. Well, my dear students, it is useful to know some major features of a spoken language if we are learning that language or we are teaching that language. I would just reiterate a few of the important features of spoken language that also become important when it comes to the language activities in a classroom. So the first important feature is that spoken language is made up of many different sounds. The sounds, that are transitory and fleeting. What I want to say is that it is the combination of various sounds, for example, various vowels, a, o, u, etc., and various combinations of these sounds which are brought together. So think of how we can devise various activities to teach these various sounds that are different from each other, depending in fact on the level of the students, their background knowledge, their age, and the setting in which it is taught. The activities should be designed. Spoken language varies from person to person. When human beings speak, their accent, their intonation, pitch, stress, volume, pace or speed of speaking, it varies from one to the other. They may choose different words to express the same idea. So what can be the possible examples of those activities if you have to teach a class where the practice is to be given in spoken skills? What kind of activities need to be designed that would cater for all these varieties and differences amongst the learners in the group who are being taught? When we listen, we do not hear every sound that is shown in reading because some letters become silent. For example, our, for example, though. So, how various letters or combinations of letters are not pronounced. And this does not happen, I would say, only in English. Even if you look at the examples from our own language, for example, khab. So what about wow in this? But, since when we learn L2, and especially when it comes to the learning of English as L2 or as a foreign language, these silent letters or combinations of letter become a lot of problem. So the teacher, while designing activities, should cater for the examples, how these, silent words or these, combinations of words are to be taught. Well, often a foreign language learner may just hear a string of words linked together. For example, the phrase, first of all. So actually this is first of all. But when you listen to a native speaker speaking it in the flow, it would be like first of all. So t and then f. T is omitted and f is changed to d sounds. I'm talking about these sounds. So, how to deal with that in the classroom while designing activities. How to enable the learners to understand this flow in the language, in this string of or the combination of words or sounds, and B, how to enable them to produce those. So word boundaries become indistinct due to the phonological change. Some sounds may be dropped or changed and others may be added, and the teacher needs to think of how all these are to be incorporated through various examples in the activities. Another important aspect is that spoken language is syntactically simpler than written language and may contain incomplete sentences. Ideas are shorter, simpler, and they are generally joined by coordinators such as and, but, or so. So, when it comes to the writing of a language, sentences are most of the times compound or even compound complex. So more complicated sentences. Speaking is simpler in terms of grammar. So there have to be some activities when it comes to the classroom activities of teaching speaking that would cater for this difference and that would enable the learners to understand how, with the help of coordinators or connectors such as and, but, and so, etc., the learners can be taught how to use simple sentences in a discourse. Well, my dear students, spoken language, particularly spontaneous speech, contains various disfluencies. There are various kind of, I would say, barriers in it, where there are a lot of kind of hesitations in it. For example, there are fillers like, okay. So, these kind of choices of or okay. There are hesitations while speaking. The speaker would be like, okay. So these pauses come there, and there are a lot of self-corrections as well. Whatsoever I have said, what I mean by that is, I mean. So, this repetition of I mean for going back to what is rephrased by the speaker, etc. So these are the regular features of everyday language, and the listeners, kind of get time through them. When the speaker, for example, takes a pause or repeats or goes back to rephrase some part of the of the utterance, this gives some time to the listener to plan his or her speech, etc. So probably a good way is to use dialogue activities in a classroom of L2, when these kind of features are to be not only introduced but are to be given practice in. Seventhly, my dear students, compared to written language, spoken language contains more colloquial expressions, slang and non-standard grammar. So spoken language is more informal in generally, everyday conversation contexts, and there are a lot of use of slang, etc. Informal language that is otherwise not acceptable when it comes to writing. So while designing activities for an L2 classroom for spoken language, this needs to be catered for. That activities should be designed keeping in mind how to teach the learners the difference between the nature of or the degree of formality in the written language and the degree of informality or the use of slang that you would find in the spoken discourse. These features they are kind of the tendencies of spoken language, and from a linguistic perspective, spoken and written language does not have clear-cut divisions as well. We cannot say this is the written kind of language and this is the spoken kind of language. Of course, language is the same, the boundaries are blurred, but there are certain tendencies or certain features that vary when it comes to the use and usage. All these factors need to be kept in mind while any L2 teacher, and especially an L2 teacher of English as a foreign language or English as a second language, is designing activities for teaching speaking in a classroom.